Guys, I feel like many of you do struggle with nutrition, so I'm going to try and explain nutrition in the most simple way possible. Essentially, the first thing I want to get out of the way, there are three main macronutrients. So if you think of the word macro, it just means big. Okay, so if we divide food into three categories, there's proteins. Word protein comes from the word proto, which we think about if we prototype. So the first thing out there. All our tissue, most of our tissue, I'm not a scientist or doctor, or nutritionist, but most of our tissue, including our muscle tissue, skin, hair, nails, is made up of protein. So essentially, to avoid starvation, the body does need this item, protein. Okay, protein is found in meat, it's found in fish, typically that kind of stuff. The second macronutrient is fat. So fat, like protein, is essential. Your body needs protein, it needs fat in order to nourish it, okay, to survive. So fat, if we think of fat, it's another source of energy at the end of the day, as well, like protein. So fat is actually protective. Now, the important thing is people confuse fat between it makes them fat. It's not necessarily at all how it works whatsoever. It's all down to calories. Calories, it doesn't matter if they come from protein or it comes from fats or it comes from anywhere else. Calories are just energy from food. The body can turn food into energy. So, and anything that it doesn't really use or utilize in some way for growth or repair or for burning off as energy, it forms fat. So fat is not necessarily a bad thing. Fat, though, is vilified by the media. You need a certain amount of body fat to stay alive, you know. Too low a body fat percentage and you die. Too high, of course, we know is unhealthy as well. But there is a healthy range. So there's protein and fat. Okay, and remember, fat doesn't relate to you becoming fat. It's just another source of nutrition. And like protein, it's essential for you to survive, okay? So you could literally just have protein and fat and you would be absolutely fine. You wouldn't starve. You'd be fine. Okay. The third macronutrient is carbohydrates. Carbohydrates is a non-essential macronutrient, meaning though it's nice to have, we don't necessarily need it. So I'm going to explain the role of these two. So because protein and fat are essential macronutrients, they're essential. So they are the most satiating and the most filling. And at the end of the day, it's all down to calories. So let's just use this bottle here quickly as a brief example. Let's just say my name is Bob. My name is not Bob, by the way. And Bob eats 2,000 calories, which is the amount of water in this bottle. Okay. The bottle is empty, but whatever. Let's just say Bob burns 2,500 calories. Therefore, what happens is Bob is now in what we call a calorie deficit. Now, it doesn't matter where those calories he's eaten come from, whether they're from protein, carbohydrates, or fats, really makes no difference. Because he's eating less than he's burning, the body has got really no choice but to use its stored energy, which is going to be body fat or muscle. Be careful with that one. So as well, so it can draw from both. It'll typically target body fat first most of the time. So yeah, that's the thing. So it has to use some of its stored resource in order to actually survive, because you're basically starving it of nutrition by not, meeting its needs, really, essentially. Okay. So I'm going to go a bit further into this. So really, essentially, if you want to eat less, the easiest way to do this is to have enough protein and enough fat. Okay. And the third element for this, guys, is muscle mass. So muscle actually speeds the metabolism up. Why? Muscle is active tissue on the body, so it's also expensive tissue. So for the body to keep hold of muscle by itself uses a load of calories. The body won't develop muscle for no reason. You have to give it a reason. So you have to send it an indication that it needs that muscle tissue. So what that means is, if you lift weights or lift heavy objects in general, your body then receives this instructions that, okay, this guy is some kind of a manual worker. He needs strength. Okay, so some of those calories you eat, rather than like being just burnt off or stored as fat, go into producing some new tissue in the form of muscle, okay? And that muscle, it gives you this little advantage because it speeds the metabolism up. So say I could only eat 2,500 calories. If I build enough muscle over time, I may find myself able to eat, say, 3,000 calories. Real world example. I routinely eat more than this every day in my own case. So if you have enough protein and a certain amount of fat as well, so fat is important because fat is the precursor to testosterone. So you can't really have a deficiency of fats and the right hormonal profile to build muscle. It just doesn't. Okay, so you need, if you're a male, generally to eat something like 100 grams of fat per day from healthy sources. So where do carbohydrates fit into all this if we're saying protein and fat are essential? So carbohydrates, generally speaking, they are the body's preferred fuel source at high intensity. So if I'm about to do a heavy weight training session or something, I'm going to go and eat some carbohydrates because that's going to get into my system the quickest, and it's going to provide me good levels of quick release energy that I can use at high intensity for difficult tasks, which is going to help me perform better in my training, which is then going to help me send the right signal to my body to build muscle. Now, carbohydrates, there's nothing wrong with them, but where they're a non-essential macronutrient, if we have too many of them in our diet, and it means we have not enough of the other two, protein and fats, it can lead to an overconsumption of calories, because if the body hasn't received what it needs in terms of a minimum requirement of protein and fat, you're going to stay hungry. If you stay hungry, that's not the best thing. So generally, I tend to prioritize protein and fat other than around my kind of like training window. But I eat carbohydrates here and there. It's no big deal. As long as I have enough protein and enough fats, I'm good. So my advice to you, in terms of fast food, things I will do is have like 2 burgers instead of burgers and fries, because that way I'm getting more protein for roughly the same calories. Generally, I'll go for like full fat milk rather than skim milk. Generally, I'm not shy of eating fatty foods like bacon or butter, because I know though they're high in fat, they're good for me and they're going to satiate me. Where people get in trouble is they have high protein, high fat foods, and then on top of that, they add other things that are like hyper palatable, like, you know, ice cream, or like, just they go in excess basically, you know, and they don't stay in touch with how the body kind of feels. The other thing, guys, whole natural foods, very, very important. Whole natural foods, they tell your body when it's full or when it's still hungry, much more reliably than processed foods. So if I was to take a protein shake versus a steak, the steak is going to fill me up and it's going to tell me I'm full much more reliably than the protein shake. I could have protein shakes and protein bars all day and I'd still feel like I could keep eating forever. These foods are literally designed, processed foods typically are hyperpalatable. They're just designed to give you minimum palate fatigue, so you can just keep eating forever. Like, if you've ever seen Man vs. Food, he'll eat like a ton of fries and then he'll be unable to eat anything else. So he'll go and eat ice cream to refresh his palate and then he can keep eating. And that's just an example of how it can overcome palate fatigue. So what I would suggest is just to try to eat. Don't tell yourself I can't have any of this stuff, but rather than that, just add whole natural foods into your diet. So say I'm going to eat protein from whole natural foods first, then I can have whatever I want. So typically those foods fill you up, so the other stuff kind of moderates itself, if that makes sense. The other thing, tracking calories is good because it gives you that awareness of what's in food. I would say don't rely on the tracking apps for their calculators. Go to a TDEE calculator, Total Daily Energy Expenditure Calculator, online to get a rough idea. Remember, they're going to spit you out a number, but it's a rough guide. They don't know you, they don't know how much you eat. But I think just simply tracking by itself is going to give you a big advantage. Tracking apps I recommend, Fat Secret, really good app, very easy to use. I've been using this app for a couple of years actually. Got a good database, has a barcode scanner, fits on your mobile phone. Right, guys. The Samsung app is very good as well. That's actually powered by Fat Secret. Right, so I hope you found some value in this video. So remember, eat your proteins, eat your fats. Try to get healthy fats. Good sources of healthy fats will be things like olive oil, nuts, whole eggs, like including the yolk, and whole milk. Okay, follow for more value.